Today on Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the big matchup coming up here in Week 5 of this 2021 college football season. And that's going to be between the Arkansas Razorbacks and the Georgia Bulldogs. Huge matchup coming up here in the first weekend of October between two top 10 teams in the SEC. We got Arkansas on one side. This team is by far the huge surprise team so far in this season. I mean, not many people thought that Arkansas would be suddenly in the top 10 as they are heading into October. But Arkansas, this team is for real. They beat Texas A&M last week by 10, completely dominated that game against the Aggies. And they also have a huge win against Texas in the resume as well. Don't forget about that matchup. So Arkansas is on fire heading into this matchup against a very talented Georgia team. Georgia is definitely a team that I would not be surprised to claim a national championship at the end of this season. They've got a tremendous amount of talent. JT Daniels is looking great. And Georgia is also a red-hot team heading into this matchup. So, huge matchup coming up here in Week 5 with major college football playoff implications. Yes, Arkansas is a college football playoff contender right now, especially if they can get a win in this game. I mean, they'll be in the top 4. So, huge game for both these teams. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting out with your team trends. Arkansas beat Texas A&M 20-10 last week. Huge win for the Razorbacks, and Arkansas continues to show. I mean, after their huge Texas win, they really put a lot of the college football world on notice. And I mean, after their win against Texas A&M, I mean, Arkansas looks for real. They are 4-0, 4-game winning streak. Georgia on the flip side completely destroyed Vanderbilt. 62-0 was the final score there. And just to give you a little perspective, Georgia was up 35-0 on Vanderbilt at the end of the first quarter. Game will be on Saturday, October 2nd, Athens, Georgia. So the Bulldogs are the home team here. And it'll be at noon Eastern time, which is, this is a noon game between two of the top teams in the country here, which obviously when those times were announced, I mean, no one really expected Arkansas of all teams to be in the top 10 in Week 5. But spread currently has Georgia by 18.5, over-under is 48.5, so Georgia is pretty heavily favored in this matchup. And the FPI is also going with Georgia here at 89.1%. So Arkansas really not getting much favor from the spread or the FPI here. Series history, Georgia leads at 11-4. Win streak is Georgia by 2. And in the last 5, Georgia leads at 4-1. So overall, Bulldogs have had a lot more success in this series. Here's your stat comparison for this matchup. Arkansas's got 35 points per game, 14 points allowed. These are your 2021 current stats. Passers per game, 219. Rushers per game, they've been excellent in the rushing category, 261 average yards there. Then for yards allowed, that's also very impressive. 144 passing, 124 rushing. So defensively, too, Arkansas has played very well all season. I mean, you got to consider they allowed only 10 points to Texas A&M last week. Georgia's got 42 points per game, 5 points allowed per game. So less than 10 points allowed per game so far on the season by Georgia. 277 pass yards on average, 177 rush yards on average. Then for yards allowed, 115 passing, 66 rushing. Here are your previous matchups for each of these teams as well. New stat this week. Now that we've got a few games under the belt, we can start to look at the trends of these teams. Arkansas last week obviously beat Texas A&M, number 7 team in the country. They beat the 15th ranked team in the country at one point. That was in Week 2 against Texas. 40-21 was the final score there. Beat Georgia Southern by 35, and then they beat Rice as well, 38-17 in Week 1. As for Georgia, they completely shut out Vanderbilt there, 62-0. Beat South Carolina 40-13. Beat UAB 56-7, and of course that was after beating Clemson, third-ranked team in the nation at the time, 10-3 in Week 1. Looking back at that, I mean, that was an insane matchup. Now that Clemson isn't a very good team, it doesn't look like anymore. But either way, I mean, Georgia only allowing 3 points to Clemson was still a pretty impressive performance. Some key points for this one: both teams are 4-0, obviously. Arkansas is ranked 8th. Georgia's ranked 2nd. Razorbacks are for real. I mean, especially after last week. I mean, even after the Texas game, just because of how surprising it seemed to see Arkansas play very well. I mean, there were still a few question marks, but Arkansas, I mean, they doubled down now. Now they've beaten Texas A&M as well, and this team definitely looks for real right now. They can make a statement with a win here. Can you imagine Georgia falls to Arkansas? I mean, Arkansas, this team probably would be in the top 3, I would assume. I mean, I'd imagine they'd probably jump Oklahoma and potentially even Oregon. I mean, with 3 wins on the schedule, I mean, this would be their 3rd quality win already in 5 weeks. So this would be a massive game for Arkansas if they were to win. But the thing is, though, winning in Athens is going to be a brutal task, especially in this matchup. A huge game for both these teams. Georgia, potentially the best team in the nation. Alabama looks to be the best team in the nation right now, but Georgia is mighty close to Alabama right now. They haven't played a close game since week 1, and this is a crucial game with big implications for both teams here. Loser of this game potentially is knocked out of the college football playoff. So, you got to consider that as well. Obviously, a team can make it to the college football playoff with 1 loss, but Arkansas is going to have to beat out Alabama and win the SEC to make that happen. And Georgia on the flip side, Georgia's on fire right now as well. So, it's quite a matchup here coming up here in week 5 with some major implications for later on in the season. But that being said, let's get to the prediction. Highly anticipated game now. Arkansas, Georgia. I got to go with the Bulldogs, 28-24. And as insane it would be if Arkansas were to win this game, that would completely put the college football world upside down. But Georgia, I got to go with the Bulldogs here. This is a very talented Georgia team, potentially the best team that we've seen in a long time from Georgia. Of course, Georgia made it to the national championship game a few years ago, but I think this Georgia team is better than that team that we saw a few years ago. So, this may be potentially the best team we've seen out of Georgia, and they've played extremely well so far this season. Arkansas on the flip side, this is also one of the best teams it looks like so far out of Arkansas that we've seen in a long time in their history. But Georgia being at home, I got to go with the Bulldogs here. If Arkansas was at home, potentially I would consider even closer picking Arkansas here, but I got to go with Georgia. This team is extremely talented this season. JT Daniels, it's hard to go against him, and I trust him more as a quarterback than KJ Jefferson right now. But probability, 60% towards Georgia, so I do think he'll be closer than what the spread thinks. 18.5, that's kind of a surprising spread there. That's very wide. So, if you're into betting, I would definitely pick Arkansas to cover in this matchup. Georgia, I wouldn't expect them to completely blow out Arkansas. I think it's going to be pretty close. 20-24 obviously is my final score, but over-under is 48.5. I'm taking the over here just barely. I think that this game does go slightly over here, but the betting is kind of interesting in this matchup. You got Georgia, who's favored by 18.5, yet the over-under is pretty low. 48.5 is the over-under here in this matchup, so kind of interesting. But that being said, I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup. Obviously, huge game. Should be a fun one for sure coming up here on Saturday. And it's, for me where I'm at, it's a morning game. It's 11 a.m. game, so it'll be quite a game to look forward to. But that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll catch you on the next one.